You guys give me a lot of suggestions, and I really do love them. Because of you guys, I read Code Atom, Lookism, Purple Hyacinth, Lalin's Curse, Socializing 101, and so on. You guys even suggest actual video ideas, asking me to cover certain characters or concepts. But one major ask is, of course, Unordinary. The big question you guys ask is, what if questions? Some of you have asked for my thoughts on how the series would have changed if John did something differently. Now, normally one question wouldn't be enough to make a full video, but someone recently asked me to do a what if video. In fact, it was commenters ThunderZ3 that requested me to make a video like this. Now, typically I'm a very analytical channel, and person in general, focusing on data and things I can actually see. Meanwhile, I'm not really into speculation. Out of my 74, I made 74 of these. Out of my 74 videos, I've only made one video that was purely speculation. My Hardcore Leveling Warrior Season 2 video was pure speculation, mainly because it was my way of ending off just talking about Hardcore Leveling Warrior, and moving on to other webtoons. Anyways, the point is, I normally don't do videos like this, but it sounded fun, and that's like 50% of why I do these things. Anyways, speculation, what if? And this week, I'll be focusing on John, and different scenarios surrounding John. Actually, I found that I'm only going to be covering 2 scenarios about John. So these 2 scenarios are kind of the same, but actually very slightly different. We're going to be talking about John's ability. The first question comes from the webtoon itself. In Season 2, after Seraphina learned the truth and has calmed down a little bit, she raises a good question, or I guess a thought. He regretted his previous actions, and he tried to change, but something still doesn't make sense. For some reason, John transferred into Wellston with a cripple persona. Why? After what happened in New Boston, he no longer wanted to part in the hierarchy. I get that, but wouldn't it have been better to become a mid-tier instead? Then nobody would have paid attention to him, and he'd have no problem blending in. He could have easily lived an average life. So why choose to be completely powerless? Why go to that extreme? No matter how you look at it, it's a bad idea. Seraphina, as well as many of you, raise a good question. What if John didn't pretend to be a cripple? First, let's take a look at Seraphina's thought process. What if John just told everyone he was a mid-tier, say exactly in the middle of the mid-tier power scale, 4.2, which is the exact middle, and also somehow the exact power level of Zeke, which feels blasphemous to say, but let's pretend that doesn't matter right now. Let's pretend that John is pretending to be a mid-tier. Would John have gone unnoticed by the school, like Seraphina said? Short answer? No. Long answer? Well, let's talk. Or I guess, listen to me rambling on this. Now, I think Unordinary does a good job of showing the consequences of power, both the lack of power and the abundance of power. You see, we've talked a lot about what happens in this world when you don't have power. But I still have yet to talk about what happens when you do have power. Expectations. A fun little word with some major consequences. And Seraphina is a great example of this, as we see her have her own little crisis before she gets involved with John. Good grades and strength don't just come from anywhere. I worked hard to get where I am. I'm the smartest, and I'm the strongest. I do everything that's expected of me. But what do I get in return? I made it. I'm at the top. So why do I still have to follow the rules? Why do I have to impress everyone? Why don't I get to do what I want? But I hear you complain. Seraphina was the queen and the strongest student of Wellston. Her expectations will be different than a normal mid-tier, right? I don't think so, viewer. For one big reason. John's ability itself. You know the first thing a student asked him when he was new to Wellston? Well, Elaine asked how his first day was and where he was from, but it was leading to one major question. So John, what kind of ability do you have? Then we see the entire class stare at him, waiting for his answer. And here we pause. Let's pretend every moment before this moment happened. The new Boston Revolt, Keon's readjustment classes, the Unordinary book, his training with his dad, everything before this happened. Now what would happen is a complete mystery, but I do like to ramble. So let's talk about what I think would happen. Now let's say John wants to hold back, saying he can simply mirror abilities. Since he can control his aura veins, he purposely holds back. Even by simply saying he can mirror abilities, do you know what the students will say? Well, what's the top comment where John showed his power? Yeah, even copying abilities would draw attention to himself. Even if John didn't want the attention, it's not like these students know how to take no for an answer. So someone will definitely try and bring it out of him if he doesn't want to show it. And so some students try and pick fights with him. And, well, they don't really care if they're in the wrong here. These are Wellston students. They think they're in the right. So these students try to fight John, and John shows his ability, fighting back. There's another edge that John possesses. No, not the fact that he can turn abilities black, though that is super cool. No, it's that John knows how to fight. He can win a battle without an ability. Having an ability, any ability, would definitely help him out. Some students would attack him just to test if he has an ability. He might not try to fight back, which would lead him to basically being a crippled. Someone who won't fight back. But let's say he does fight back. Eventually more people start challenging him. Then a rumor starts spreading around the school. Did you hear about the new student? Oh, the one with that crazy ability that can mirror abilities and turn them black. Yeah, he's also super skilled at fighting. And he doesn't need to rely on his powers. So more people challenge him, which means more rumors spread, which means more people hear about him. Low tiers with trash abilities and power levels hear about someone who doesn't have to rely on abilities. Mid, elite, and high tiers want to test out said ability, looking for its limits, how far it can go, how well he could deal with said mid, elite, or high tiers, which means one thing. Royals will take notice. Blake would likely not care. Cecile and Eisen, I know he's on a royal, just go with it, would love the story. Remy would probably be interested and try to recruit him onto her little posse, but she likely won't do much. Meanwhile, Arlo and Serafina will have possibly interesting reactions. I haven't mentioned Serafina in this timeline yet, and I won't yet. Arlo! Much more predictable. It's likely Arlo would hear about these fun little rumors of a mid-tier causing a ruckus, and likely try and investigate him. Noticing how he walks, how he acts, how his eyes show no fears to high tiers and royals. How in fights he seems to hold back against other students. Eventually asking someone, like Eisen, to investigate John, looking into his background. And this sounds familiar. Oh, right, yeah. Arlo did this already. Huh. Okay, what about Serafina? How would this affect their friendship? I think it would have a major impact on their friendship, because I think they wouldn't have been friends in the first place. I have a question to ask you. Why were John and Serafina friends in the first place? They didn't like each other for the longest time. Serafina straight up bullied John because John disrespected her. And it's likely it would still happen like this. John likely would have acted the same as he does here. And it's unsure if John would try and fight back, but it's unlikely he would, and if he did, let's say he loses. I'm not getting into that argument. Anyways, why are they friends? I think it's because John's beliefs, and how far he was willing to go to defend them. Crippled John believed that you don't need to be powerful to be strong. You don't have to have the best ability to make an impact on the world and the people around you. It's an important, and I think a really nice belief. One that he's lost in this latest season, but he was willing to stand up for what he believed in. Even willing to get beaten down by two students for standing up for someone else. Which is the biggest reason Serafina learned to respect John. Because he's willing to get beaten down for what he believes in. But I'll be honest, if he doesn't get beaten down, they probably wouldn't have been as close. Don't get me wrong, they'd probably stop hating each other. But they definitely wouldn't be as close as they are now. and I'm not sure he could have convinced her that the hierarchy is trash. But I do think he would have gotten closer with other people, namely Blake. We hear Serafina explain that under the right circumstances, Blake and John could have been good friends. And I think here they could be friends. Maybe not as close, but still close. And I absolutely would have loved to see their friendship. Anyways, it's likely that Serafina wouldn't have been such close friends with John, which means she likely wouldn't have lost her ability. Meanwhile, I don't think the Joker accident would have happened either. But I still think Arlo would have pushed John too far, and he still kind of would have gone wild. The biggest reason the Joker incident happened was because of Serafina, both because she was being bullied and because John didn't want her to know the truth. Meanwhile, in this new timeline that I just invented, I don't think John would be as close as he was with Serafina. Maybe just a few more friends that he's not super close with. None of them that really keep him anchored in reality. So really, it's just the same plot, just a little more sad. No Joker, instead just John slowly going insane. If he didn't already go insane by students constantly challenging him, because these students definitely don't respect anything. Serafina not being super close to John, but also wouldn't have lost her abilities. Okay, so that was depressing. What if John skipped all that nonsense and went straight to being the god tier, heck, a royal, the king of Wellston? Okay, going back to Serafina's thoughts, she eventually questions, by acting as a cripple, John put himself in the same position he was in before. Just like before, students picked on him because he was weak. Just like before, he wasn't able to defend himself or any of his friends. And just like before, he couldn't handle the pain of being a cripple. At first, I thought it was punishment, self-punishment. But I now realize it's something different. It's an addiction. I mentioned this very briefly when I questioned if John had PTSD, but I likened it to alcoholism. You know how former alcoholics don't go to certain places like bars because they don't want to put themselves in that position? It's the same with John. He never wanted to be in any position of power. He didn't trust that he could stay clear with the same beliefs that anyone, no matter their ability or power, could be strong. It's actually kind of noble when you think about it. John literally could have had it all. Everything that Arlo or any other royal had. But he chose not to. Because he definitely would have relapsed. Which is why I don't think he became a mid-tier either. He would have struggled to have power over someone. He knew better than to put himself in a position where he can hurt someone else. In the latest issue, Serafina kind of nails John's issue on the head. A lack of trust in anyone, but most importantly, a lack of trust in himself. Believing that he wouldn't be able to handle the power and use it responsibly. I definitely gave him a lot of flack for it, but it was actually one of the most responsible things to do. You cut power to something corrupt. But he realized that he was the corrupt person, until the school reminded him of how awful other people are. In the end, I don't know a timeline where he could have made the correct choice. Becoming a royal is a bad idea. He knew he couldn't handle that power. A mid-tier would just delay the inevitable, and the cripple path is the one we see right now. John had next to no control over what became of him. It seems like any path he could have chosen would result in the same place he is now, or something worse. I actually feel really bad for him after this, because every other student thought it was so irresponsible of him to leave the hierarchy, to leave the power, because the whole Spider-Man with great power comes great responsibility. But John couldn't handle that responsibility. So he decided to leave both of it behind, the responsibility and the power, leaving it to people he deemed better, more capable, high tiers who were actually trained and raised in this scenario, in these settings. John believed that he couldn't do it. So he took himself out of the running. Every other student kind of gets angry at him, I guess, for doing that. But I think me doing this made me realize that this was probably the best case scenario for John. Going back to what he used to be. just the low tier, someone who didn't have power over anyone. This got really, really sad. But that's just my ramblings of an alternate timeline. What about you? Any ramblings you would like to share? Do you think I got something wrong? Leave it in the comments below. And like always, thank you for watching.